Now, you've just given a bit of a speech for the UK, rallying the troops, scaling up in businesses. What is your message here to the community in Davos?
Yes, simple message actually, which is the UK very much open for business, attracting record levels of investment. We just saw PwC come out with a report this week that says that the UK is the third most investable country in the world. They were saying more bosses want to come and invest in the UK than almost anywhere else. And that was the message I was delivering to the Confederation of British Business, really kind of getting across this idea that we are open for business and we want to scale up Britain.
What kind of investment are you trying to attract? Because a lot of the narrative I hear in the corridors is like, is the UK in a more stable place now?
But it's definitely politically more stable. Obviously, we went through some slightly choppier waters, I think it's fair to say. But it's completely stable. Rishi Sunak has set out his top 5 priorities for this year, and they include growth, which is why I came to flesh that out here in Davos. Look, you've got a country that has one of the world's only $3 trillion tech sectors. There's only America, China, and the United Kingdom. So a lot of that will be in tech, AI, pulling together things like our amazing university sector, but not just that. Culture, many other areas that the UK has real strengths in.
And have you actually had commitment from international companies in putting more money for 2023? And is that also thanks to cheaper pound?
Well, I think, of course, the pound has strengthened somewhat now, it should be said. But I think a lot of these investments are long term, but I've been talking to companies who are, for example, building amazing, renewable energy resources in the UK. So the UK, people won't know this. People even in the UK won't know this. But we have the world's biggest offshore wind farm. And we have the world's second biggest, and third biggest, and fourth biggest.
Bloomberg viewers know that.
Bloomberg, of course, Bloomberg would be all over it. But most people won't be aware. And actually, that's because we've been investing for years, and I've met a lot of people here who want to do even more. So the next set of wind farms are going to be the size of 7 football pitches put together in a single turbine, and 300 of the turbines next to each other. That's real scale, and that's why we're producing more renewable energy, I think, than any other nation in Europe, and certainly the world's biggest wind farms.
Are you concerned that actually Labour are slightly dominating with Keir Starmer, the head of the Labour Party, and also the Shadow Chancellor here, trying to also attract business? Are they the next party for business?
No, not really, for 2 reasons. One, we are, of course, welcome democracy, that's good, it spurs us all on. But, in the end, myself as business secretary and my colleague from the cabinet, Kemi, who is the trade secretary, we are the ones in power, right? So we have the ability to actually do things. Secondly, and no disrespect to Sir Keir Starmer, but it's not very long ago that he sat in Jeremy Corbyn's cabinet, the extreme left-wing leader of the Labour Party, and was telling us that he believed everything that Jeremy Corbyn stood for, and that was mainly to trash business. So it's an incredible sort of, conversion if he is here, and I think businesses are still rather wary of that.
You think, because we're hearing otherwise, actually, that he is trying to, lure business in preparation for the next
I'm sure he's
election.
I'm sure he's very convincing. He's a lawyer, right, by trade, right, and he'll pick up a brief. And he'll take that brief and he'll turn to it and he'll deliver it just like any barrister or a lawyer, in his case, can. So I'm sure he's very convincing, but I'm not sure if he was able to stand at the last election under the banner of Jeremy Corbyn, who was content to destroy business. And actually, when him and his chancellor came here once, Corbyn's chancellor, they came here to slate business, to slate British business. Sir Keir Starmer sat in that cabinet, applauding it.
But the polls are not in your favour, so would it not be better that both parties, actually both main parties, are pro-business?
Well, look, I'm very, very happy
we don't know what happens in 2 years.
I'm very, very happy for all of us to be pro-business. We all always have been. We've always been. I started my own printing company 32 years ago when I was 21 years of age. I'm probably the first business secretary for quite some time who actually came from a business background. That's an experience I've had. I think that it's really important that any government, all governments, are pro-business, and so of course, that's to be welcome. I would just ask whose heart's really in it.
If you look at the Inflation Reduction Act, we hear a lot of leaders here saying what the US is doing is not fair. Should we not do the same in the UK?
So I do think that the United States has a lot of catching up to do. 10, 12 years ago, we were investing in, for example, those wind farms, and essentially with some subsidy to get them going. Now they fund themselves, much in actually producing some of the cheapest electricity. We've already have plans in place to have no more petrol and diesel cars sold in the UK by 2030, less than 8 years' time. So we're already way ahead of the mark. America's catching up. So there's much in the Inflation Reduction Act that I welcome. America really getting on with it. On the other hand, there are one or two things there, like rules of origin, which are not just anti-competitive, but protectionist. And I know that Biden has already talked about trying to resolve those things. I've also been speaking to my American opposite number, the Commerce Secretary, and people like John Kerry about this, and I'm hopeful that this all gets resolved in the round.
Talk to me a little bit about bankruptcies. Do you worry that once the energy support package is being taken out in the spring, that a lot of companies will simply go bust with higher interest rates and the world they're facing?
So first of all, we're keeping £5.5 billion of business support, which is of course smaller than the £18 billion we've been running up till now. I think, and we'll keep this under close watch, but I think it's true to say that energy prices, and certainly the gas wholesale price, has come down a lot from its peak. I looked day before yesterday, it was 137 pence per therm. I can remember it up at over 600 pence per therm. So it's come down a lot. We need to see that actually lead through to the business bills being lower. I've written to our regulator, Ofgem, about this, as has the Chancellor, and we look to ensure that the consumer, or in this case the business, is actually getting those reductions.
So the cost of wasted energy for poorly insulated tube is also a big topic. It will total almost 13 billion in the 2 years through October of 2024. The IPPR has called on the government to bring forward nearly £6 billion in energy efficiency, promised from 2025. Is that a possibility?
Yeah. So we're still spending the money, which is an even larger sum, which actually still applies up to 2025. And I do agree, we have Victorian homes by and large. They did not do insulation. They did many things, the Victorians, they were brilliant, but they didn't do draft exclusion properly. But I think it's true that we've gone from about 11% of homes which are at energy performance C and above, so the better ones, to 46% of British homes being in that category. So we are actually making progress on this, and we've got further to go. I've got more that I'll be announcing, and watch this space.
Okay, so you'll come back on Bloomberg for that?
I would love to, of course.
Okay, talk to me a little bit about what kind of ties you're expecting between the UK and the Gulf states.
Yeah, well, I was there last week actually in the Gulf. I was in Saudi Arabia and then in the Emirates, and there's a huge amount of sort of joint work going on. It's kind of interesting if you look at what's happened through the war in Europe. For us in Europe, that's meant higher energy bills, problems we were just talking about. Of course, for some Gulf states, that has meant a lot of extra money, and that money is investable. Yes. And they know that times are coming to an end in the next decade or so, or two maybe, for hydrocarbons, and so they want to invest elsewhere. In the UK, we have 4 of the 10 best universities in the world, so we have a lot of the science and technology in green tech. So what I was talking to them about in Saudi Arabia, in Abu Dhabi, was making those investments in the UK, which they're already in many cases doing, but there are more to do.
Will they buy all the football clubs?
Yeah, I don't know. I was with the chairman of Manchester City, who tells me he goes and watches nearly all of their home matches, which is quite a commitment from 3,500 kilometres away. But
do you think, will there be any Premier League clubs that will be in British hands?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, the UK does have obviously a historic record of being one of the most open economies in the world, and it works both ways. We own huge amounts of investments in foreign countries. So if you go to the United States, for example, you'll find that the UK owns lots and lots of businesses there and elsewhere. So we're quite open about that. I think with football, there is a sort of family community interest. It's interesting to see how some owners do manage to ingratiate themselves with their fans. Others not so much, and we always encourage them to do that. But I'll leave the detail of that to the experts.